the USC Trojans are making moves year 4 into the Lincoln Riley era. And it's a big move, Drew, as they hire away Notre Dame general manager Chad Bowden. You might be familiar with that name, Football Scoop of the Year, player personnel executive voted on by his peers. And Drew, well, it comes with a nice little pay raise, reported to be making $275 to $300,000 in South Bend. Will make over $1 million annually at USC. That's over 233%. I ran the numbers because I was intrigued by that. But Drew, you and I talk about USC a lot. We talked about them on signing day, and they're a very capable team under a very capable coach. You look at the last 2 seasons, 8-5, 7-6. That's not why they hired Lincoln Riley, Drew. They have expectations there. And even though they have talented parts of their roster, I think you and I both agree that it needs some vision. Enter Chad Bowden. What are your thoughts on this for USC? And realistically, if you're a USC fan out there, maybe convey to me why I think this should be really important for the program.
I love it. I mean, look at Notre Dame breaking all the way through to the national title game. Chad Bowden had a huge hand in that. And really, since Marcus Freeman has taken over there in South Bend, Coop, we're always asked about it. Hey, what's different about Notre Dame? And they just seem to be getting a little bit different caliber of an athlete. I think what also stands out about Notre Dame and kind of their recruiting chops here in recent years is that talent identification. They do such an excellent job of not only IDing potential difference makers, but getting those guys on campus, visits, 2 games, junior days, and whatnot. And yeah, they don't close with all of them, but I think since Marcus Freeman has stepped in right in this name, image, likeness era, Notre Dame has found ways to get more and more of those guys there to South Bend. So, I think this is a bit of a blow for the Irish. I'm sure Marcus Freeman's going to backfill with someone that's going to do an excellent job. But for USC, this is huge because to me, Cooper, as I'm putting together this final top 247, right, you see some players you like that are headed to play for the Trojans. And you're like, yeah, I like this guy, but why is USC in Detroit getting a defensive back? There's plenty of DBs in LA. And really, I think over the last few years, when you look at USC and kind of their struggles on the recruiting front, they don't have much of an identity, right? They're trying to go into Georgia, get these big, SEC pass rushers, and they lose them at the buzzer there to Georgia and Kirby Smart. So I think it's big for the Trojans because Chad Bowden's going to come in and kind of establish a plan, and that has been needed there in LA.
Yeah, I think infrastructure, right? And you said a plan, methodology, philosophy, right? And this comes down to talent identification. This also comes down to identifying the right fit for your program. That's what Notre Dame did such a phenomenal job on under Marcus Freeman. And before that, Brian Kelly and Chad Bowden and Marcus Freeman elevated that over the last couple of years. But it really wasn't similar to what Chris Peterson did at Washington, identifying those fits for those programs. Those programs that are really different from any other program in college football. That wasn't Washington, but that is Notre Dame. That's a high academic institution. That place is not for everybody. And for USC, we talked about it. Alabama had more players signed from the state of California than USC did this year. We talked about one of our favorite guys the last 2 years have been Xavier Brown and have been Chuck McDonald. They're on their way to Tuscaloosa. If you're Chad Bowden, and this should have been communicated to Lincoln Riley from day one, that absolutely cannot happen. I think the emphasis needs to be back on the state of California that yields more players to the NFL than I think than 47 other states, right? Only behind Texas and Florida and potentially Georgia based on the year, right? So California has to be a priority. But I think the biggest thing for USC is they got to ask themselves, who are we? Who are we trying to be? And what is a USC Trojan? And I think that's been honestly one of the more frustrating things for a really proud alumni base and fans of that institution. Lincoln Riley wants to go into Texas. He wants to go get these high caliber players that fit him. For the majority of his time there, he has ignored the state of California. I think Chad Bowden, that's his job, to really kind of bring that back, bring some vision to this place, and build a foundation and some continuity. And I kind of want to tie this in. This is new, right? The 7-figure GMs are new. Chad Bowden, Courtney Morgan, that's new to the player personnel world. What's also new is coming out with a statement thanking the AD, and there's nothing wrong with this. It just goes to show the level of involvement now that the athletic departments have in hiring these type of individuals. And the pursuit of these type of individuals is not just up to Lincoln Riley. It's up to the ADs around the world that are scouting these guys, trying to find the guys that can bridge the gap, especially in the NIL era, and that are going to have conversations with athletic directors alike. Chad Bowden, in my mind, if Lincoln Riley wins 6 or 7 games next year, it's not good enough. Chad Bowden is not tied to him at the hip. And I think that's relevant because, Drew, what do we see right now in the NFL every single year? We see this massive turnover. One year it's a coach, one year it's a front office. They're not necessarily always tied to each other. Matt Eberfloss in Chicago is not tied to Ryan Poles, right? Mickey Loomis in New Orleans is not tied to Dennis Allen. I think we're kind of entering into that stratosphere a little bit where the guy overseeing the roster, the one that's in the hip pocket of the AD, is not necessarily tied to the head coach. And I find that really, really fascinating because that means college football in this regard is kind of progressing a lot faster than I ever expected it.
Now, can we get rid of the official visits? Can we just move to like team visits, no more photo shoots? Hey, we're going to work you out. We're going to measure you. We're going to get some medicals. Like, are we that close yet when it comes to the NFL-cation of college football? It's got to be right around the corner, right?
We're getting close. I mean, combines, I think about that all the time. Imagine if you could actually have college player personnel staffs present at these combine events in Atlanta and Charlotte and LA and all over coast to coast. What's stopping that from happening? You know, is the transfer portal even real, right? Does the NCAA have any credibility whatsoever? The more and more we learn about these type of things, you wonder, Drew, yeah, we might be really close to a similar calendar to the NFL and college football that is commercialized throughout the entire offseason. And if you're college football alike, and if you're sitting at the top of these conferences, why wouldn't you do that? Because the reason you do everything is motivated by money. And that's just another way, quite honestly, to make money at the end of the day. Nonetheless, translation, Chad Bowden, good for USC football, good for Lincoln Riley. I think this is going to help them in the long run.